A quick disclaimer before we begin this Chapter 3 video. This chapter is very organic chemistry and biochemistry focused. Keep in mind that these are not my primary areas of study, and I will only be going as in-depth as the book goes for brevity and clarity purposes. So as we continue, please keep that in mind. Hello and welcome back to Biology for Beginners. As always, I am your host, Morgan. This week, our topic of discussion is a brief introduction into organic molecules. So before we begin our discussion, I'm implementing this new thing here. At the moment, you should see the slides that are showing the terms and definitions that we will be using in this video lecture. And if you would like to have those definitions with you, feel free to pause the video, grab the screenshots of those definitions, or refer back to the PDF version of my slides that is available for free on my Patreon. And I have chosen to do it this way so that the slides later in my PowerPoint I can have less words on as we go. All right, with that out of the way, let's continue. The first thing to remember about these organic molecules is that carbon is the key. And these organic molecules are formed on carbon backbones. But why is carbon so important to these organic molecules? Well, that has to do with the fact that carbon has 4 valence electrons, circled here in blue. And this means that carbon has 4 spots where it can share electrons, form these covalent bonds, and make the organic molecules. Now, the example that we have shown here on this slide is a very simple depiction of a methane molecule. And you can see the electrons that originate from carbon highlighted in blue and those from the 4 hydrogens highlighted in red. And since carbon can bond to more than just hydrogen, but importantly, it can bond to other carbons, you get a wide variety of shapes that make up these hydrocarbons that are the base of the organic molecules that are essential to organic life. You can have these little single carbon molecules with just 1 carbon. You can have lovely long branches of carbon with other things branching from the atoms. And you can even have these pretty little rings form. And the important thing about all of these shapes is that they kind of help figure out what the molecule is able to do. But these shapes are more than just the flat depictions that you can see on that slide. They have a 3D shape. Now, here we're showing, again, methane. So this molecule here. And this is from a very simple modeling kit that helps you visualize the 3D structure of these molecules. And shown here on the left is a more flat 2D depiction that you'll see students, professors, scientists draw with the 2 hydrogen atoms on these single lines are what would be considered the flat on the plane, and then the dashed line sort of going backwards, and the wedge line would be coming out of the page. But on the right here, you see a more 3D computer model version of that same molecule. So when you're talking about the properties of organic molecules, it's important to keep in mind that they do have a 3D shape. They are not just these little 2D things jotted down on the page. But what exactly do these lines that you see in these little drawings mean? Well, each line represents 1 pair of shared electrons. Now, in the case of the molecule on the left here, all of these lines are single lines. So there's 1 pair of shared electrons in each of those lines. All of these are what is known as single bonds, meaning each atom is bonded together by 1 bond, so 1 pair of electrons. If you look at the atom on the right, however, you'll see that little equal sign looking thing that I have highlighted between two of the carbons. Well, each line there is one pair of shared electrons. Each line there is representing a bond. When you have two lines between two atoms like that, it's a double bond. They are sharing two pairs of electrons. And then you see every other line in the drawing then is a single bond. So the lines just mean one pair of shared electrons. Occasionally you have a situation where two or more molecules will share the same molecular formula, but they have different shapes. Now, in the examples I have here on the left, we have C4H10, and the molecules in question are butane and isobutane. If you count all of the atoms there, you will see that they do, in fact, each have 4 carbons and 10 hydrogens. But where they differ is their shape and where one of those carbons is placed. This means that they have different properties. And then another way that isomers can pop up is where a double bond is in a molecule. With 1 butene and 2 butene here, C4H8, they look very similar. They have the same number of atoms, but that double bond is in a different place, which then gives those molecules slightly different properties as well. Now, I'm sure you might be asking, okay, so why are these organic molecules only carbons and hydrogens? Why are they only hydrocarbons? Well, we're about to find out that there's more than just carbon and hydrogen in organic molecules. You can also add these things called functional groups. Now, in this slide, the ones that I have highlighted with the little teal arrows are all hydrophilic, meaning they can dissolve in water. And this helps these molecules that wouldn't really be very hydrophilic on their own be able to actually dissolve in water, which is important because water is the molecule for life. It is the solvent of life. And the presence and placement of these different functional groups will also change the properties of the molecule. It's that carbon skeleton is just the backbone. You can replace any of those hydrogens with one of these functional groups and change the entire property of that molecule or the entire function of that molecule. Now, I also have highlighted the amino groups, which are very important in building proteins, and the phosphate group, which is very important in energy and ATP, which we will get into in later talks and later chapters. The methyl group at the bottom there, the CH3, it is not hydrophilic, but it does function to change the properties of the molecules when it is there. So how do we make these molecules? What makes everything stick together? Well, basically, you're gonna start with what is known as a monomer, which is the most simple unit of whatever organic structure, organic molecule you are trying to make. And you can combine multiple monomers to make a polymer. So that's just multiple little units put together. And you put these things together usually using what is known as a dehydration reaction. And this kind of reaction forms a bond but releases water. And then if you put enough polymers together through dehydration reactions, you get a macromolecule. So the dehydration reaction is kind of like the glue you add to stick these things together. And if you want to break them apart, which you definitely need to do in things like digestion to be able to use these compounds, you put those things through what is known as a hydrolysis reaction. And what this does is it starts with the longer polymer, adds water, and then breaks those bonds, spitting out a short polymer and a monomer. And then you kind of rinse and repeat and do it until it either breaks something down all the way or breaks it down into a version of the molecule that can then be used. So the hydrolysis is like the goof off that removes that glue that you had applied prior. And again, if you stick enough things together, you get a macromolecule. So these dehydration and hydrolysis reactions can take quite a long time if they're kind of left to go on their own, which is why the body uses what is known as an enzyme to kind of speed everything up. It would be kind of like trying to bake cupcakes without an oven if the body wasn't using enzymes. It would probably eventually happen, but the oven in this metaphor greatly speeds things up. Now, disclaimer here, I do realize that the heat in the oven is important to making cupcakes. This is a metaphor. But essentially what happens in the enzyme, at the beginning, your starting material is going to meet the enzyme. In the middle, that enzyme is going to bind with the starting material, and the kind of cooking is going to happen if we're going to keep following the metaphor here. And at the end, the enzyme is going to release the products and then rinse and repeat. The important thing here is that the enzyme is still intact and can then continue to function and continuously bind with more starting material, spit out more products. The enzyme we're showing here is basically showing a hydrolysis reaction, if we're gonna liken it back to the previous slide, but enzymes will also work in reverse as well, and not just break bonds, they also form them. A lot more goes on during the middle part when the enzyme is binded with the starting material, but that is not really relevant to our discussion. That is much more in depth than we will get, and that is much more biochemistry than you probably want. But I am done torturing you with organic chemistry and biochemistry right now, and the next few videos will also be of the same theme. We're going to start getting into the actual organic molecules that are relevant to life, like the lipids, like the nucleic acids, like proteins. So be ready for that. Well, I should probably also mention carbohydrates here since I mentioned the other three, just to be fair, but keep a lookout for that, and I do hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, evening, what have you, and I will see you all in the next one. Thank you again for watching this video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and ring that bell if you would like to see more. And if you'd like to follow me on any of my other social medias, the links are down in the description below. Don't forget to check out thereptilegoth.com for all of my articles and blog posts. If you found any value in this video and you would like to help support the channel, please check out my Patreon page. That link is also in the description down below. And a special thanks goes out to my Diamond Dragon patron, Diane B. What you're doing is really helping me fund a dream here. I will see you guys all in the next one.